Welcome everybody to another Kuta worksheet tutorial. This time for geometry, we are doing identifying quadrilaterals practice. So this is actually a pretty good exercise. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. State all possible names for each figure. So we have quadrilaterals, that means four-sided. Okay, so all these are going to be four-sided shapes. The first one, okay, obviously we recognize it as a square. Now, what makes it a square though? A square is specifically a parallelogram. Okay, what does that mean? A parallelogram means it has opposite sides parallel. So these would be parallel and these would be parallel. It's a parallelogram with all sides congruent and all angles congruent. Okay, now this fits under several umbrellas. Why? Why does this fit under certain umbrellas? Well, we already know that it's going to be a parallelogram. Okay. It's a type of parallelogram. Now, what other things does it classify as? Well, it classifies as a quadrilateral. It classifies as a parallelogram. Does it classify? We already know it's a square. Does it classify as a rhombus and a rectangle? Well, let's go over here. Let's change color. We know a rhombus. Okay, if you didn't know, this is a parallelogram with the following: with all sides congruent. That's all there is for a rhombus, all sides congruent. And a rectangle, okay, is a special type of parallelogram. It's a parallelogram with all angles congruent, which means they're going to be all 90 degrees, okay? So these are the three amigos, the three special parallelograms. And they're all types of quadrilaterals, clearly. Okay, I don't know what's wrong with this. I really want this to go this way. Okay. Maybe you guys are a little OCD, maybe not. Okay, so these are our three things. If you want to take a picture of this, that'd be fine. Jot this down, but this would be helpful. So we know that if it has a parallelogram with all sides congruent, well, that classifies as a square. Square has that property. What about all angles congruent? Well, that qualifies as a square too. So a square is a specific type of rhombus and rectangle and parallelogram and quadrilateral. All of those apply to a square. So a square is all of those, letter C. Let's look at number two. Number two, we have a quadrilateral, and we only know that all sides are congruent. Okay, this means all sides are congruent. So what does that apply to? Well, it definitely doesn't apply to rectangle because we don't know anything about the angles. It doesn't apply to a square because we don't know anything about the angles. But it definitely is a quadrilateral, it's a parallelogram, and it's a rhombus. Okay, it's definitely those three, so it is letter A. Number three, quadrilateral. Okay, notice here we have two sides congruent, and it's not going to be a parallelogram because opposite sides are not congruent. Okay, for a parallelogram, has to have opposite sides congruent, and that is not the case here. So it is definitely a quadrilateral. It's not going to be a parallelogram. Okay, so it's not this one. It's not this one. And actually, so happens, and you'll learn this later in future sections, that this is going to be a kite. Okay, a kite has. Let me change the color. What color have I not used yet? Purple? All right. A kite has adjacent two pairs of adjacent congruent sides, which is this. Okay. It also has another special property for kites, which we'll learn about, or if you may have learned about it already, not my class, that the diagonals are perpendicular. So this one is a kite. Number four, we have opposite sides are parallel. That means it's going to be a parallelogram, and it's also going to be quadrilateral. And there we go. A is a bad choice all around because a trapezoid is a type of quadrilateral. Number five, we have here, it's four sides. Opposite sides are congruent, so we know it's going to be a parallelogram. Okay, so it's either A or C. But it's also a rectangle because all the angles are congruent. So it is letter C. Oh, I didn't see D, but quadrilateral includes all of them. All right, we have a few more. I'll go a little bit quicker now that you're starting to get the hang of it. This one is definitely a parallelogram and a rectangle, but we also have to include quadrilateral, so it's option D, in case you need to pause it. Okay, number 7, we have, okay, not all sides are congruent, opposite sides are not congruent, but it's not a kite. This is going to be, well, we don't even know, honestly, if these are parallel. Well, they're parallel if same side interior angles are supplementary, and they are for both. Okay, that's the key here. We have these two angles are supplementary and these two angles are supplementary. So this, in fact, is a trapezoid because it has one set of parallel sides. So this is actually a quadrilateral and trapezoid. So we have option B there. This one's another parallelogram. Okay, this one, we don't know anything about this one, so this is just going to be a quadrilateral. State the most specific name. This is a new section, okay? So most specific name, this is going to be a rhombus. Why? Because it has all sides congruent. This one right here is a trapezoid. It has one pair of opposite sides that are parallel. Okay, this is a square. That's the most specific. Technically, it's a rhombus too and a parallelogram, but that's the most specific. We don't know anything about this guy. He is simply a quadrilateral. This one's a kite. This one's going to be a rectangle, even though it's also a parallelogram and a quadrilateral. This one just is a parallelogram. Okay, it's not a rectangle and it's not a rhombus, so it's just a parallelogram. And then it looks like we have another parallelogram here. Copy, paste. Copy, paste. That's all there is to this one. Hopefully this was helpful. Hope you learned something today, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Wes Explains Best.